cool set, man.
Yeah, well, I hope we make it more scary because like we're supposed to be talking about horror, but I think it's gonna be alright. Like, I feel ready, like the guests are always nice, so we'll be alright.
Yeah, you got me, man.
Of course, man, all good.
Yeah, I'm quickly gonna go to the top, man.
Sure, man. Guys, I can't read in this light. Can somebody please fix the light? Oh, what the fuck is that? What? Did you guys see that?
What? No.
No. Never mind, I don't know. Welcome back to Let Me Put You On. Today we're talking about horror, and our main product of the show is going to be American Horror Story.
This is what it does to you. This house.
I'm not a dog! Welcome.
It's a classic LA Victorian, built around 1920 by the doctor to the stars at the time.
We'll take it.
I'm sorry. American Horror Story is an anthology series where every season presents a new chilling concept, and the concepts vary from killer clowns to witches to cults and even ghosts. Today's guests will introduce their favorite horror pieces and tell more about them.
Today's guests.
Today's guests will introduce their
Favorite niche horror pieces?
favorite niche horror pieces.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You had it.
We hope you enjoyed today's show, and just remember, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that they're not after you. Today on the show, we have Matthias, Johanna, and Cheryl. Say hi,
Hello.
guys.
Hello.
So, Matthias, how about you tell us what you brought to the show and how does it relate to American Horror Story, or what do you think is so special about it?
Well, I was asked to bring some niche content, so I was thinking about the work of David Lynch, and specifically, I think his last film, Inland Empire. It's from quite a while ago, 2007 or 2006.
From Hollywood, California, where stars make dreams and dreams make stars.
To want to see.
Anyway, this film, Inland Empire, I think it's one of the more scary things I've ever seen, which put it right there in the genre horror. Also, some of the things in the film might fit with the typical genre conventions, but like there are some scare moments in there. Usually, should I continue?
Yeah, sorry. I'm just...
Okay.
Never mind.
The film lasts for 3 hours. We had to press pause and step outside because we just couldn't take it anymore. How it was like a continuous, almost panicky feeling.
Yeah, it's just disturbing and it messes with
It's very
your mind.
disturbing,
Just
yeah.
like all David Lynch's films.
Yeah, he has quite a diverse genre, but I think in his best films, and for me this is one of them, there's always something which is really disturbing. And usually in his other films there's also a little bit of humor in there, so there's an absurd scene which is maybe weird but it's still funny, so there's some reprieve for the viewer. Not in Inland Empire, it's straight, maybe until, you know, the the final scene, it's just straight madness, really. And I think this is, for me, I don't really like the classic horror films like The Ring, because it always has some element of, and I guess that's what makes it scary. There's something you can't explain.
Yeah.
So there's always something supernatural in there, but also you kind of know what to expect, and with the work of David Lynch, you never know what to expect.
So, Johanna, how about you introduce your media product?
Okay, it's called Munchausen by Ari Aster. It's a short movie actually. It's, I think, under 20 minutes. And without spoiling the concept too much, is about a family, specifically a mother and a son, and the son leaves for college, but the mom tries everything in her power to keep him like as close to her as possible, which in the end goes down a very dark path. And connected to that, like a more horror version of the short movie is basically Run. And that's a full-length film. And it's also about a family, and the daughter grew up in a wheelchair. She had almost, like, a lot of illnesses. She was always very sick. And throughout the movie, she begins to suspect that maybe she isn't actually as sick as she's been told. And again, without spoiling too much of the ending, she suspects that her mom has something to do with it. The whole thing is very tense, in contrast to the short movie, which is more very light and happy, and then suddenly goes very dark and a plot twist.
It's like off-throwing.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's supposed to be horror until it becomes horror, really. It has that like specific cinematography and editing style, like colors are really like they're kind of flooded even.
It's like a Disney, Pixar, like
yeah, like
very
it's like a really
animated.
positive American, like really stereotypically American happy movie.
Yes.
About a really nice, like the American dream type movie.
Yeah, the boy is so
which-
successful at college, everything's
Yeah,
fine.
exactly.
Yeah, and the music is also very impressive, I think, because there's no dialogue
Yeah.
in the whole short movie. So everything is done through the acting, which is also amazing, and the
Yeah.
music.
Music really guides the viewer throughout the whole short film.
Yeah.
So from happy to not so happy anymore. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Cheryl. So what have you brought to us?
I brought to you today a little game, a 2D platformer game called Limbo.
Yeah. It's Limbo.
It's not your typical horror game, so it's not supposed to be like jump scares or something that you would see in typical horror games. But it has a like scary setting, kind of really dark, and I think you can see it in the cover. It's like everything's basically also done in black and white. So the only thing that changes is like gray patterns, and it still gives a lot of atmosphere through that. So the game, you start off as a boy who's just woken up in a forest, and then you don't really know what the whole thing is about. The only thing you know is you need to find your sister. So the whole game basically guides you through, and depending on how you play it, it can take you 3 to 6 hours. So it's a really short indie game, but there's a lot of elements in there that are like scary in the horror sense type. So for example, music and background sounds, they're really intense, so you really feel like you're immersed in this forest. Also there's like spiders hunting you, but like a big spider and like other stuff happening, and it's really frightening, especially for like kids. Not to say that it's only a horror for kids, it's definitely also for grown-ups, but yeah, like I said, it's not really scary in the typical sense of a horror movie, but it's just this whole atmosphere.
I'm sorry. So what would you say is the favorite part of the game for you? And maybe even how it could relate to American Horror Story, except of course the horror.
Okay,
theme.
so my favorite part of the game is basically how the whole game is played. So because you only have, as controls, it's only you can run left, right, you can jump, and you can interact. That's the whole game. But it's a puzzle game still. Like there's challenges included in there, and you will always find yourself challenged. And the game will get harder the more you advance through the game, and it would also get darker, and you will see the journey of this boy basically. This is what I like the most about the game, and how it relates to American Horror Story. Well, I would say in American Horror Story, usually the episodes start off with something, and until the end of the season, you don't really know what's going on. And I think it's the same with the game, because you just start as this boy in the forest and you don't even know what this game is about and why it's the way it is. But then the more you progress throughout the game, the more clearer things get, and at some point you will see, okay, this is the purpose of the game, or this is what it tries to show me, and that is also a really cool element.
Well, what would you say is the favorite part from the short movie that you told us about?
I think the plot twist, obviously, because in the beginning the pace is also very slow, nothing bad is happening. I think also the way the actors show it, like, of course they're like talking but you can't hear the dialogue, but I don't think it's not missing at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, the way the plot twist is portrayed is very, very amazing.
For sure, especially the way they use music, as we already talked before.
Yes.
Like, classical music is really well implemented here, and like how it goes from really calm and like even relaxing music
Yeah, it really
to
raises
really
the
horrific
tension.
music,
Mhm.
for sure. And this is a great short movie to recommend to somebody without telling what it's about.
Yeah.
Just by looking at the first 10 minutes of the movie, you wouldn't even say it's horror or it's
Yeah.
supposed to be scary until there's this plot twist. And
Yeah.
so what would you say is your favorite thing about Limbo?
My favorite thing about Limbo is actually the interpretation at the end. So without spoiling what's coming in the end, there's like this whole journey that we talked about, where I was already saying it's about fears, like he's facing his fears. It's not really sure that he's facing his fears, because the name Limbo, it's not the name of the boy. The limbo is actually a state between being alive and death. So it's like where you're fighting, so you're either gonna live or you're gonna die. Or in some other interpretation, it can be the state where you have to choose before you die if you go to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
So this whole journey, it is up to interpretation where it's going and where it's taking you, and also the ending. That's what I really like, because I read a lot of theories on the internet what the ending might mean. So we don't know if this boy is deaf and just fighting to come back to life, or if he died and he's fighting to go to hell or heaven. And then there's the whole plot, why is he like searching for his sister, and in the end then there's like another plot, and it's just like up to you to interpret like what is going on.
Yeah, actually, in Dante's Divine Comedy, Limbo is the place where people that are not necessarily bad, so historical figures, are, who didn't know Jesus Christ, so we couldn't accept them as their savior. And I think unbaptized babies.
Exactly, that's another interpretation.
Yeah. So Limbo is the place where you end up if you are not a bad person, but have not been baptized as a Catholic, and you just remain there. So, for example, old philosophers are there. They're just kind of hanging out in this place that is okay-ish, like I would say like a mediocre mall or something. Isn't Bilgaard near here? You know, have you ever been to that mall? I imagine something like this is Limbo. Like, yeah, you can. I mean, it's not. Yeah,
It's not bad.
it's not
good.
bad.
It's
It's
not great.
not good.
It's just there.
forever. Yeah, so that, I guess you can interpret it multiple ways.
Yeah.
I also played the game. I really liked it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I like the multi-interpretable aspect of it.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like you say, it's between 3 and 6 hours, but once you've played it, it kind of urges you to play it again,
Yeah.
to look for details and to
There's
understand
also
it better.
secret stages in the game, but you need to find them, of course.
Mhm.
So it
Yeah.
can keep you like playing it, even though it's not that long and not supposed to be like
Yeah.
a lot of like depth in there.
Talking about Lynch movies, if you had to choose one to be your favorite, which one it would be and why?
Yeah, so besides a recommendation, that would be Mulholland Drive, I
Yeah.
think. Because for me, it's the typical Lynch film, what makes him good as a filmmaker. I mean, Inland Empire is just a 3-hour trip that you don't want to experience again. So I'm not going to rewatch that. But Mulholland Drive, I've watched a couple of times. There are just these scenes in there where you think, how do you come up with this, that
Yeah.
stick with you?
So I have a question for you. You said this is a 3-hour trip that you really don't want to experience again. So have you ever watched it a second time?
No.
Would you ever watch it a second time?
Only if afterwards I could get drunk.
Okay. And if
Because
you
it's,
remember
it's
it.
too scary.
How's the concept of the first one applied there? Like,
I don't know.
I think it's the same like topic of family dynamics.
okay.
Of course, it's a different situation because the girl is sick from the beginning of her life, like she's been sick her whole life,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the boy is just leaving. But I think in the movie, of course, the period where you suspect that something is wrong is much longer than in the short film. So the tension rises a lot slower. The pacing is slow in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but when you get through that, and if you watch the movie, you already know that something is gonna go wrong. So you're just waiting for that to happen, and it happens really slowly, but that really, like, it creeps up on you that you get very nervous for the main character. And when you finally find out what happens, it's still not the whole story. Like, there's still, like, the first reveal comes, and then there's another reveal. So it really keeps your interest, and in the end, the pacing is also very fast, which I think really drives home the intensity of the plot twist.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Isn't it kind of different in the sense that with the Munchausen you said it's really vibrant at first, you really think everything's alright, but in Run you said like this girl is sick, so from the start, so isn't
Yeah.
that already like a little bit dark?
Yeah, it's not a happy story at all. At
Okay.
no point in the movie, the mother and the daughter get along well in the first quarter of the movie. So it's technically still everything's fine, but since it's not as vibrant as the short film, it still has a very different atmosphere, which also is more similar to American Horror Story, because I think a lot of the horror that comes from American Horror Story is like the characters and that you don't know the motives of any of them, and so how they develop throughout the series is also very reminiscent of what happens in Run. Sarah Paulson also plays the mother, and she also plays in American Horror Story, and she's an
Oh,
amazing
okay.
actress, so she really convinces you that she's like crazy.
Amazing. So, amazing show today, guys. I'm not a big fan of horror stories because they just make me pee my pants. But for you who are interested in horror stories, maybe these David Lynch movies, the short movie that Johanna brought to us, and also the game Limbo, which would probably be the least scary, I would say, but definitely fits the vibe, is something that you could try out with your friends or maybe alone. Depends how extreme do you want to be. And thank you to our guests today.
Sure.
You guys were amazing. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah,
It
what
came
is
to-
it with clowns?
No, like, it's just that clowns are creepy, man. Like,
Yeah, but why though?
yeah,
I think
exactly
it's just because
why.
we like them as children, we're like so used to
never
them.
liked
They're funny at
No,
that
I also
point.
never
But
liked
But then
them.
you
I was
see,
like-
yeah, but then you see one with a knife in another movie, and they suddenly
Yeah,
become
with
scary.
Yeah.